Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We are talking fantasy baseball. I'm your host, Eric Henriksen, and with me, once again, is my Spider-Man. To my Spider-Man, he's Josh Day. Josh, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Ready to talk some fantasy baseball.
Cool, cool, cool. All right, on today's show, we're going to talk about letting go of players, when to cut bait, and who to cut. And because, it's getting late early. And we've got another new segment this week, a player spotlight, the curious case of Crow Armstrong. And then our last segment, the return and impending return of some players that should be of some excitement to us. And just a friendly reminder to please subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating. We're available on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We have a lot of players to cover today. I don't want to waste more time, but I actually do just want to say this real quick. StatCast released 2 new tracking stats earlier this week, swing path and attack angle. We won't really be talking about those or using them to analyze players until we understand them more. And you and I were just talking before I pressed the record button. There's just a level to this where it just becomes ridiculous.
Yeah.
like, I'm pretty sure attack angle is like the angle of your swing. And
Yeah.
to me, it's like I've known my entire life. If you have an uppercut swing, you're one, more likely to miss, swing and miss more, and two, hit pop ups. And if you swing more flat, you're more likely to make contact. I don't.
Right.
I think it's that simple. Anyway, we'll talk about those things once we have a better understanding of them, rather than just making it the Wild West and giving opinions that are just way off base. So, with that in mind, let's talk about letting go of players and knowing when to cut bait. As the legendary Yogi Berra once said, it's getting late early. So, Josh, you brought this up after our episode last week. Knowing when it's time to move on.
Yeah.
Is it that time? I mean, it's May 23rd. I know even last week I said it's still early. Is it?
Well, I mean, judging by our 12 team league this week, I would say it's ripe time for cutting, even if it's we don't think so. But yeah, I mean, there was wild drops in the 12 teamer this week. I couldn't believe some of the drops.
Some of them included Tyler Soderstrom, Michael Harris. You dropped Max Meyer, which I was a little surprised at, but
Mhm.
less so compared to some of these other guys. Who else? I know I'm missing a few.
Oh, Tyler Soderstrom, Dylan Cruz.
Dylan Cruz in a keep forever league.
Yeah,
What?
I was like, real.
That made no
Um,
sense. Shane
and
Boz was dropped,
Shane
which I
Baz.
kind of understand, but I
Yeah.
also don't understand. Yeah, just some really like some names that you just don't
hmm
drop these names in a keep forever league, especially on May 23rd.
Yeah, I mean, I did make some drops, as you said, Max Meyer. I also dropped Sandy Alcantara,
That one I'm okay
um,
with.
and a couple others. But yeah, I think, I guess it is time. It's what, we're one quarter through the season.
Yeah, already.
And I guess it's time to start looking at your roster. I think it's two things I tend to look at are track record. Like if the player has a long track record, if they're like a veteran, or if they're like a rookie, it's harder to kind of tell who they are if they don't really have much of a track record. And we're only going off of minor league numbers and what scouts and whatnot kind of forecast for them. And also, underlying numbers, looking at like fan graphs, seeing what's going on under the hood, and just seeing like, are they underperforming or maybe they're just flat out stinking. It's kind of those two things. I think it's also, looking at your roster and it's like, well, who's like jamming up your roster? Who's keeping you from making moves? The opportunity cost of owning somebody like Sandy Alcantara, who was just sitting on my bench. I couldn't even use them, just because he's not who he was. You know, he's not. He's lost his. He's demonstrably lost his command, and he's his own worst enemy, and he's a giant headache. So
Yeah.
he was like, I wasn't using him, so and I'm also stashing Roman Anthony, so it's like, well, there's a spot that's jamming up my lineup as well. So I just decided it was time to cut bait and take a flyer on another pitcher. I think I picked up like Will Warren or
Not
or
a bad pickup this week. Not a bad pickup at all.
so a younger arm that's showing some upside and is possibly more useful than Alcantara right now.
I think you make a very good point about players that are clogging up your roster. And I think I had kind of that moment a couple weeks ago when I dropped Jackson Jobe and Dustin
Hmm.
May in that same
Yep.
league, which, yes, they are keep forever players if I wanted to, but you can only keep 6. So there is that. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it's like they were underperforming tremendously and they were kind of actively hurting my team in some ways.
Your team is so stacked that you have like 8 players that you could probably keep before you entertain the idea of keeping Job. I understand there's like, he could be, trade capital at some point, but at the same time, it's like, well, you're a win now situation, so you need to prioritize that.
It's tough because you hope that a player like that grows into just being a stable member of your rotation. At least
Hmm.
this year, at least that's what I was hoping for. And sure, he could have, but I decided to keep like Tyler McGill, Shane Smith on the roster over him. And
Yeah.
honestly, I don't think there's probably going to be much difference in performance rest of season between those 3 players. So I decided to keep the ones currently performing better. But,
Hmm.
when you have somebody like Sandy, like you said, he's just not the same pitcher coming back
Hmm.
so far from Tommy John surgery. Like, you have to know, like, okay, I know what the upside is, what he used to be, what the ceiling is, but he just doesn't have that ceiling right now. And
No,
he's actively hurting your team to the point where he's not even playable. So
no.
yeah, it's time. I think Sandy Alcantara is a great example of somebody who, in a 10 or 12 team league, you can definitely move on at this moment. Now, would you rather drop these guys or try and sell low? And that doesn't mean that people are going to buy, but would you take the time to do that and possibly pass up on somebody on the wire who's useful? Do you think there's certain players that I should say a certain level of players that's worth trying to sell low before just dropping? Or are you just like, you know what, these guys have no value at the moment because their value is tanked so much? I'm just going to move on.
Yeah, I think I mean, it probably depends on it's like a case by case. In terms of, I guess we're going with Sandy Alcantara here. I felt like he really shown no value, period, outside of like one start. So I just feel like other managers would see that and I wouldn't be able to get anything from him. Or I would have to do probably more work in that I would have to probably package him with a more valuable player. And I'm not sure tossing in Sandy Alcantara would be, a difference maker.
Yeah, no, you'd
Um,
probably end up overpaying for whatever trade you're making at that point.
so I just felt like I made a bad draft pick, and I think a lesson learned with Alcantara is I'm pretty skeptical of players coming back from TJ.
Especially in year 1, right?
Yeah, I think I'd be more likely to invest in year 2. Now DeGrom seemingly is having value, but he's also kind of the best pitcher on the planet. So um,
Did you
you know.
see his matchup with Aaron Judge the other day?
Oh yeah, I
Oh
saw
my
that.
god,
That was fun.
that was a brilliant matchup. Like,
Hmm.
DeGrom was just trying to blow him away. Judge was keeping up with 99 mile an hour heat to the outside part of the plate. And DeGrom his facial expressions during that at bat were priceless, I think, because he knew what was going on. I think Judge knew what was going on too. Two titans absolutely going at each other, and that was great. Now, pitcher wins out most of the time, right? If 300 batting average is considered good, but
Yeah, yeah.
but that was I would love to see Judge and DeGrom match up like 10 times and see who comes out on top more.
Yeah. But yeah. But as you were saying, you asked, do you sell? But I think you would have to find a player that's slumping that has shown like we're going to talk about Tyler Soderstrom. If you were frustrated with his, May so far, if you want to rid yourself of him, I would try and sell him before dropping him. Just because he had an explosive April, there's buzz around him. People might, at least on Yahoo leagues, they might see his, really low player ranking, or high, I should say, high player ranking, and not maybe they didn't realize he was slumping, stuff like that. So
If you're going to sell low on a player, you can't buy high on another player.
yeah.
Typically, right? Like that the like sell high, buy low type of trades are really hard to execute,
Hmm.
especially with people who don't quite know what they're doing. People who don't
Uh-huh.
listen to this podcast, they will, yeah, like you said, they'll just look at the ranking, the current ranking of a player, and go, oh, well, this guy's better than that guy. Why would I make that trade? And that's
Yeah.
not the case. And that happened to me earlier in the season. And thank God the manager was too, to be blunt, stupid to make that trade. When I offered Gavin Williams and Max Meyer for Shane Baz.
Oh yeah,
Now,
jeez.
hindsight, bad offer. In the moment, and we talked about it on the podcast, great offer. Now, I
Yeah.
was I was trying to sell high on Myers, package a slightly, a sell low on Gavin Williams for a buy high. And the manager took one look at the rankings and went, "No." And I
Right.
bet and you know what? Not I don't even have to bet that he's regretting it, because not 2 weeks later, Meyer had the 6 inning, 14 strikeout game, and I sent him that stat line and I said, "You regretting turning down the offer yet?" And he was regretting it at that point, and I can only imagine now how he's feeling because Boz has been atrocious.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, Myers has since really fallen off a cliff, and I would say the only thing you'd probably want is Gavin Williams, who has the up arrow right now.
yeah, but I would say of those three, it goes Gavin Williams, Meyer, Boz in performance since I offered that trade.
Yeah, sure.
But that kind of leads us into who we should be looking to move on from. And Shane Baz is one of the players that I have written it here on the rundown. Is
Yeah.
he someone that you might be looking to move on from? A couple other names I've got. You don't have to address them all at once. But Shane Baz, Michael Harris, Tyler Soderstrom, who I would not move on from. Let's just put that out there right away.
Yeah.
And then the fourth player I have written here, I want to get to specifically. Like, what kind of players are we looking to move on from at the moment?
Well, I guess, we're talking about we've been talking about Shane Baz, and I guess I'd move on from him. I think what's interesting is like when you make the decision to drop somebody, I guess you kind of have confirmation if you're right or not, if somebody else picks that player up.
Yep.
And maybe you're still right, but it might sting a little bit because you're like, oh, the contrarian voice in your head might be saying like, see, I told you so, but the player might still end up sucking. But anyway, yeah, no one. I was like, when Shane Baz was dropped in our 12 teamer, I was like, should I pick him up? And I was just like looking at my roster of pitchers, and I was just like, I don't know. Like, he's just gonna sit on my bench right now because he's kind of unusable. Because honestly, I'm not quite sure what's going on with him. Like, he's had 4 ace level starts, and the rest have it's just been a terrible mess, and it seemingly of his own making.
Yeah, they're like highs and lows. There's nothing in the
Yeah,
middle.
and
Absolutely nothing.
there's kind of no rhyme or reason. I'm sure there's like maybe some pitches he's tinkering with or shying away from, but even under the hood, his swinging strike rate is it's not elite. He has a high walk rate, high homers per nine, et cetera, et cetera. Terrible home park, and it's a tough division. He just seems kind of unusable right now. And like I said, I suppose if you have like a free roster spot, you can view him as a stash and a wait and see. But I just think there's better younger pitchers to take flyers on right now. Maybe like Logan Henderson. And also in terms of track record, as I was talking about before, he doesn't really have much of a track record. Like I think he was promoted from the minors like what, 2 seasons ago, and hit the ground running once. And he was a very highly regarded rookie. He came up and he was quite good. But then he got injured, and then we're kind of seeing him post injury, and it's a real mixed bag. I don't know if he must be like tinkering, figuring stuff out, relearning some stuff. I don't know, but it's just a giant headache. We don't really know what kind of pitcher he's going to settle into. So I think he's a big risk at the moment.
Yeah, all of his indicators just point to a borderline useful fantasy player, an ERA just under or just around 4, but his K per 9 isn't there. Like, yeah, I think it's time to move on from Shane Baz and guys that were a flash in the pan, that like did that microwave cooking, got real hot real fast, but have since dramatically dropped off. And I don't mean
Hmm.
just like slowed down. I mean dramatically dropped off. Like Tyler Soderstrom has just slowed down. So he's
Yeah.
probably going through an adjustment period where the league has adjusted to him. Now he's adjusting back to the league because all of his indicators still look really good. But a guy like Shane Baz is just cliff. I think
Yeah.
you can cut bait with somebody like him. Now, what about somebody like Michael Harris, who has a 4-year track record of being a pretty
Yeah.
useful fantasy player?
Yeah, he's continued to slump since we last spoke, and it just remains a frustrating situation. Now, I will say with Michael Harris, he has a name value. I think he won Rookie of the Year. I think he's been hyped by by the fantasy community for as long as he's played in the majors. So I think you could probably package him, or you could sell low on him with some name value because I mean, to my knowledge, he's not injured. He still has some decent underlying numbers that you could point to, like his 269 XBA. I guess you could try selling him. But I'm not sure in terms of like your own ownership, I'm not sure there's enough that suggests that he will be a major fantasy asset moving forward.
I'm struggling with him because he was dropped in our 12-team Keep Forever League. And you make a good
Hmm.
point that he does have name value, which is why I put in a waiver claim for him to pick him up. Now, I wanted Soderstrom, but Soderstrom went to a team with a higher waiver priority number. And I'm kicking myself, just like you were kicking yourself, that we wasted our higher priority waiver numbers on somebody like Tyler McGill.
Uh-huh.
Who did you pick up?
I guess Job.
Okay. I mean, that one's not as bad as Tyler McGill, but it's not Tyler Soderstrom, which is who I think we both
Yeah,
would have preferred to have the opportunity to
I
get.
would have rather taken a hitter for sure.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what to do with Michael Harris because I do
Yeah.
have a little guy named Ronald Acuna coming back today.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure if Harris is going to be worth keeping around, but I did pick him up. I don't know. I look at his numbers. His chase rate is atrocious. His
Hmm.
barrel rate is atrocious. It's actually down
Yeah.
4 percentage points from his career average of 10. His expected WOBA is 313, which is not great. I don't see much to get excited about in his profile here. His launch angle's down, his hard hit rate is career low. It's like this is not good.
No.
But keep in mind he is just 24. Yeah, he's I think a very curious case, and depending on the type of league you play in, maybe he's a player you don't want to cut bait with yet because I did go into his career stats splits by month, and he has had a season just like this. It was 2023. He was horrible in 7 April games. He was even worse in May, and then June he hit 370. So it's like
Wow.
it's entirely possible. Oh, yeah, he hit 370 in June, he hit 290 in July, 336 in August, 296 in September. So like we've seen a slow start from Michael Harris before where he's turned in a very valuable fantasy season. So I'm wondering patience here, but the indicators don't say that you should be patient. So I think he's a very curious case.
I also wonder if his, you know, like he came on the scene before the rule change, or the pickoff rule change, where he gave you like he was like a 2020 guy, and I think before that rule change, 2020 guys were a lot more valuable than they are now.
Yes.
Because I don't think Harris is ever going to provide like great power. He doesn't have like a particularly high power ceiling. And so then unless he's not hitting higher in the order, which he's not, he's at the bottom of the Braves lineup, and he's not getting on base. He's not giving you a good batting average. He's not giving you counting stats, and he's not going to have steal opportunities. So I just wonder after that rule change, and now steals are more easier to find. I just wonder if that's just really kneecapped 2020 players.
It may have. It very well may have. Though he does have 8 stolen bases this year. Stole his 8th base last
Oh,
night.
that's
But
right.
yeah, but he is a frustrating player, and I've never bought into him prior to
Yeah.
this year. He's never been on my radar as somebody that I'm interested in. I just saw him dropped in a keep forever league, and he's a 24-year-old player, and that gives me 4 Atlanta Braves in my lineup as well. So I think that's just one too many. So there's a good chance that I move on from Michael Harris once Mike Trout gets healthy, because Acuna and Trout now swap. I have so many players on the IL. I had Trout on my
Yeah.
bench active as an injured list player. Now, one last player that I wanted to talk about here, who I think is a really curious example of what to do, talk about a track record. And we're talking about an MVP level track record. Christian Yelich has been the definition of whatever comes below mid in today's like kid slang, right? Like mid is just so middle, so average, so meh.
Hmm.
He's been like whatever's below that. His launch angle earlier this week. Now he had a 2-homer game yesterday. His
Hmm.
launch angle earlier this week was negative point .4.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, and we're not talking about like a tiny sample. Like he has not been on the IL this year. I mean, he's played 49 games. He's got 207 plate appearances. His launch angle on the season, oh god, it's even worse. It's it's negative point .8. And
Yeah.
that goes with hitting 2 home runs yesterday.
Yeah.
What do we do with Christian Yelich? I mean, he's providing you some counting stats. He's got 9 homers and 8 stolen bases, but what do we do with this?
Sell, sell, sell. I mean, I take that 2-homer game and sell him. I think he's
Yeah,
got name value.
that's true.
Some managers, I would suspect, don't get this granular with playing fantasy baseball, and you might be able to just go off name value and the fact that he hit 2 home runs. But I just think looking at his underlying numbers, it's just like he currently has a 270 WOBA with a X WOBA of 303, which is such a blah player.
It's worse than Michael Harris. It's worse than Michael Harris.
His ground ball rate is 63%. Actually, I think it might be higher, but but it's just like it's a lot of numbers that don't inspire a lot of confidence. Now, I know there are some fantasy analysts that are kind of thinking this is a comeback. They're projecting a comeback for Yelich, but I think I would look to sell, honestly, and see what you can get. I wouldn't
Yeah.
drop him, but I
No.
at least not right now, but I would definitely be aggressively trying to sell him.
See, I think he is probably the prime example of a player that you should not drop, that you should try to sell. It's not, is it selling low? I don't know, just because the batting average isn't there, but the counting stats are.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like a sell mid if we're gonna keep with the
Yeah.
lingo. It's a sell mid, see what you can get for him. You're probably gonna take a small profit loss based on where you drafted him, but I would say Yeah, he's probably a sell, especially coming off of this 2-homer game. He was abysmal in May before that, but he's a player you can't drop because of that name value. Like I said,
Yeah.
MVP track record. Man, yeah, that's a tough one. Is there anyone else that you'd be looking to kind of move on from that falls into this category of knowing when to let go, knowing when to cut bait?
I mentioned I dropped Max Meyer. I think he kind of falls into this category of young pitchers that we just don't have a great sense of who they are yet.
And who haven't really shown us a prolonged ceiling in any sort of capacity.
Exactly. And I was just, looking under the hood with him, and it's like I think one thing, like he had that great start, a 14 strikeout start. I think it was his slider is his great pitch.
Yeah, it's a very, 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 very above average pitch.
I learned that he had stopped, like he's since that great start, he's basically stopped using it as much.
I wonder if it's bothering his elbow coming back from Tommy
Oh,
John surgery.
right, yeah.
I do remember hearing, Saris talk about how some pitchers don't throw certain pitches. Like, even though they have it in their repertoire, they don't throw it that often. Or some pitchers just refuse to learn certain pitches because it hurts their arm in some way and they don't want to feel that pain while they throw, which
Yeah,
I don't blame them.
yeah. So, kind of hearing stuff about like concrete evidence like that makes me just kind of think like, well, there's really no rhyme or reason when I can use this guy. I don't really know what to expect. Like, do I want to suffer the growing pains of him trying to figure out ways to work around this pitch? I don't know, but it just feels like it just felt like I could cut bait because I just can't really trust this player.
Tough to succeed, I think, when your fastball is as bad as Max Myers. And it is, I think, one of the worst fastballs, if I'm not mistaken, for a starting pitcher, as I bring up his stuff plus numbers here, which is the easiest indicator to see if a pitch is a quote unquote good pitch or bad pitch. How much you take stuff plus, location plus, pitching plus into account when it comes to evaluating players, it's up to you. But Max Myers fastball 89, which is well below
Oh,
average.
yeah, that's
It's not great.
no.
So he would have to throw that slider a lot and be slider forward before he could succeed again consistently. All right, so next up we have a brand new segment I'm calling the Player Spotlight. And that's where we're going to dive into one player for a good amount of time and just talk about them ad nauseum so you don't want to hear us talk about them anymore. But you'll be well informed on what to do with that player once we're done. And today, Player Spotlight is on the curious case of Crow Armstrong. That's right. Pete Crow Armstrong of the Chicago Cubs is having a ridiculous season to start off. One I don't think anybody saw coming. And although it's getting late early, it's still early enough to say he could be a bust in the long run. But Josh, my big question to you is, who is the real Pete Crow Armstrong?
It is curious. I'm a bit on the fence here. I mean, I will say I don't have any shares of PCA,
Neither do I.
but on one hand, yeah, it looks like the fantasy world was completely wrong on PCA and just saying that he's a defense, glove first player with, pretty much just speed as his, biggest contributing category. But so far, it looks like he's on his projection of like a 30-30 250 batting average is totally in the realm of possibility. However, there are, things like his climbing K rate, it's approaching 30% this month, and he does not walk a whole lot. I imagine he's going to go through cold stretches. Just how brutal these cold stretches will be remains to be seen. So, what do you what are you seeing with PCA?
I'm seeing a guy who was drafted in like the 13th to 15th round in drafts. Managers were hoping that he'd be a huge speed contributor to their teams. He did steal 27 bases in 123 games last year, hit 10 home runs, but he hit 237 with a
Hmm.
292 BABIP, which is like a pretty fairly average BABIP. Struck out only 24% of the time, which is not the best, but it's not terrible either.
Hmm.
I see a guy who is just on an extended heater, to be
Hmm.
completely honest, because his numbers this year are not that far off from last year.
Yeah.
And we're talking a 40-point improvement in batting average. He's already got 12 homers in 50 games this year as opposed to 10 in 123 last year. Like I said, he's up to 14 stolen bases. I mean, he's the 6th ranked player in Yahoo currently.
Yeah.
And I just don't see a guy who's got a 15% swinging strike rate. And I
Yeah.
maybe give 15.8. I was giving him a 1 percentage point benefit of the doubt there. Uh, and an overall contact percentage of 74%. I just don't see a guy like that putting up numbers like this for the entire season. Like you said, he's going to have a cold spell, and I anticipate that cold spell being brutal. I'm talking about like batting average in the 100s,
Oh.
no counting stats. He might steal the occasional base because he may get on base, although his walk rate is just 4%. That's down from last season.
Hmm.
I just, I don't even think he's this year's Jaron Duran. And that's something that I've said to you when we looked at PCA when he just started to go ballistic. I don't think he's even this year's Jaron Duran because I don't see notable improvements across the board like Duran made last season.
Yes.
And Pete Crow Armstrong just hasn't done that. It's an increase in barrel rate, which to me just means he's hot.
Hmm.
Especially when the exit velocities are right where they were last year. And the hard hit percentage is still, it's not like nothing here stands out to me whatsoever. And I don't understand how anyone can buy in and go, he's the guy now. Like, no. If you want to talk about a sell high candidate, I think this is the premier sell high
Yeah.
candidate in fantasy baseball right now.
Yeah. I mean, also to speak of him being hot, his WOBA is currently 369. He hasn't, but his ex WOBA is 339. So, I think he's definitely maybe overproducing based on that.
He's got a chase rate in the first percentile, 43.5% chase rate. That is awful. To give you some context, Luis Robert, who is having an abysmal season,
Oh my God.
okay? Luis Roberts' chase percentile is in the 35th percentile, and Luis Robert is hitting under 200. Pete Crow Armstrong chases way, way, way worse than that. To me, it's just like the biggest red flag. It's like you change the Cubs
Yeah.
logo to red. Okay, it's like not good. Sell, sell, sell. I don't buy it at all. If you look at his rolling X Woba curve on
Yeah.
Fangraphs, I'm sorry, on Baseball Savant,
Uh,
trending down over the last
uh,
100
yeah.
plate appearances. So I think it's coming. Like, I'm sorry, but when you look at somebody's StatCast page and you see the sliders and those last four, the chase, the whiff, the K percentage, and the walk percentage,
Terrible.
if those are all really bad, it's a glaring red flag to me. It's like a giant billboard that says danger ahead.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
No, I think there's definitely reasons to be concerned, and I think you definitely if you can find a buyer that will give you, top 25 player, pitcher, hitter, I think I would take that, especially somebody with like a bigger track record. I think I would do that. Would you trade would you look for like Vlad Guerrero Jr.?
that might be the range you can look at because of how well he's performed. I mean, he's hitting 280, OPS over 850, 12 homers,
Mhm.
14 stolen bases. Sixth ranked player. I think you can look in that range.
Yeah.
If I had Vlad, obviously, based on my rant just a minute ago, I am not taking that deal.
Yeah.
But if I'm the PCA owner, yeah, I'm looking in that range, and then maybe I don't know if I'm gonna get it, so I may look the
I gotta
next tier
try.
down. Yeah, you got to try. You have to try with a player that's been this good to this point in the season. I mean, he's on like a 41, 42 homer pace. There's no way Pete Crow Armstrong is hitting 40 home runs. I'm sorry, just no way at all.
Yeah. And there's no way he maintains his 274 ISO.
No way. No. He doesn't hit the ball hard enough. Like, I don't even think Vegas had odds on him being a 40-40 player. Like taking a sucker's bet because he's already at 12. I'll give him 25 homers and I'll give him 40 stolen bases. What do you think about that?
I think that's reasonable.
So we've kind of talked about his rest of season outlook. Some sell high, some buy high. Do you have any comparable players to him at all that he might be rest this season? Like, I know I mentioned Jarren Duran.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else in that power speed realm that PCA might be rest of the season?
I mean, at the moment, I guess you could say like Ellie De La Cruz because he's got the power, the speed, and also the extreme highs and when the highs are high and when the lows are low, they're low. So my brain struggles with that just because early on I really had no Spider-Man meme for those two.
Nope. I don't think anyone did.
But I guess top of mind that kind of I mean, that'd be wild if that were to be true. But at the moment, there's a lot of swing and miss, it looks like, but there's suddenly great power and speed. So I guess that could be a rosy outcome comparison.
Would you trade if you were the PCA owner? Would you trade for Ellie?
I guess I would. Well, it seems like Ellie's been cold.
Yep.
But I don't have any shares of Ellie, so I just kind of assume, like if you didn't get De La Cruz in a draft, like you're just not going to get him unless you like are obsessed and are just hell bent on a trade. I just kind of like assume like these high drafted players are just kind of like who they are, and they're great, but then it's like, oh yeah, I hear like, oh yeah, the Reds are a terrible offense.
They are abysmal.
And then I look at box scores. I'm like, oh yeah, it seems like De La Cruz is kind of cold. So my understanding of De La Cruz, I mean, I know I really wanted him. I really wanted him in a trade in the preseason. He has a bit more of a track record. I think I'd probably trade for him. I'm not sure that the manager would give up De La Cruz based on what they spent for him for Crow Armstrong, but maybe they're frustrated and they're wanting to jump ship. But yeah, I think I mean, based on what PCA is doing so far, I guess that would be a comp. But as you said, he could just turn into like a Jarren Duran.
I look at Ellie's numbers, and we haven't really talked about him. I don't think we talked about him at all. Like, this might be the first mention.
I think so, yeah.
Ellie, welcome to the Talking Fantasy Baseball podcast. He's cut his swinging strike rate by about 1.5%, which is great, especially for a guy who struggles to make contact. Increases contact percentage by 3%. Good for Ellie. He does have a lower swinging strike rate than Pete Crow Armstrong. Just putting that out there. He also swings less. Ellie is swinging at 42.8% of the time, whereas PCA is swinging 60% of the time. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a very high swing percentage. Basically, I can start seeing pitchers throw a little bit more out of the zone against him, which I think will just make things worse. The profiles are volatile, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Would I sell PCA for Ellie De La Cruz? I would, just because I think a lot of the numbers PCA is going to put up this year have already happened. Because I think he's going to be colder for most of the rest of the season, whereas Ellie still has the summer at Great American Small Park. So
Yeah.
I think if you're gonna look at what they're gonna do rest of season, I think Ellie has more stats left still to put up than
Yeah.
PCA. So I would make that trade. If I'm the PCA owner, I would aim for Ellie. I think he still falls in the same range as Vlad, who you asked about before.
Mhm.
But as far as like comparable players go, I think Ellie's a good comp, but with a lower power ceiling for Armstrong.
I agree.
All right, so the return and impending return of some players. I had a couple in mind specifically. One of them was Ronald Acuna. He's coming back. I don't think there's much analysis to do on Ronald Acuna. I think he's a pretty much automatic slot back into your lineup right away, right?
Yeah, I think you gotta just put him in there.
Easy, done. Ronald Acuna out of the way. But I think someone who requires just a tad more analysis, someone
Well,
who
wait a
does.
minute. Wait a minute.
Oh,
He's not in your lineup.
he's not. Well, okay. So what I did was yesterday. All I
Looking
did
at
was
your lineup, and he's on your bench.
he is because all I did yesterday was I went to the next day on. You can change days. So I
Yeah,
looked
yeah.
ahead to today, and I wanted to make sure that I activated him instead of accidentally leaving him on the IL. So I just swapped him with Mike Trout. I haven't actually set my lineups yet today, but that is one thing I will definitely do. I just wanted to make sure that I activated Ronald Acuna and didn't mess up because I noticed when that news came down yesterday, I think it was the Angels had already played, so I couldn't swap him and Mike Trout. So he was stuck on my IL, and I was like, I am not going to forget and miss doing that tomorrow. So I did it yesterday. But yet I will. I promise he will be in my lineup. Uh, Someone who is also on my bench, not in that league, in our other league, who I do think requires a bit more analysis. That's Matt Shaw. Matt Shaw called back up this week from AAA Iowa back to the Cubs. He's gotten the start in every game since he's been up, and he's gotten a hit in every game since he's been up. What do
Mhm.
you think of Matt Shaw? Has anything changed for you?
Not really. I think I'm still pretty skeptical on him. It's like, did he actually fix his funky batting stance? I believe that sort of retooling takes more time, and I think something that's often changed in the off season. Also, his average exit velocity is still pretty meek at 84 miles per hour. So
Well, I think that has a lot to do with his first 18 games.
but didn't they face the Marlins?
Yes, it
Yeah,
was.
it was like terrible Marlins
Yeah, it was a
pitching.
3-game series against the Marlins, and then
I don't have this in front of me, but this kind of harkens back to the PCA conversation. But I kind of feel like the Cubs have had like a really sweet. I know they've faced the Dodgers a lot, but like I feel like they've had like a really sweet schedule to start the year. So
I mean, they
so
do
maybe
play in the NL
that's
Central.
yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical, but I'm skeptical of a lot of new rookie players.
Let me tell you why I'm excited actually about Matt Shaw coming back up. And that's because in his like last week or 10 days or 11 days, whatever it was, of him being in the minors, his average exit velocity jumped to over 90 miles per hour. Now, the max exit velocity is never going to be there, right? He's just not a big guy. He might hit 110. Like, I think that's probably where he's going to top out.
Hmm.
He's run. He's been in the lineup every day. He's gotten a hit in every game. I like that. Why? Because when he was up the first time, he was extremely passive to a detriment.
Hmm.
And I talked about this a little bit on the midweek minutes. Little plug. Listen on Tuesdays for the midweek minutes. Matt Shaw has come up and he's just looked better. He's looked more aggressive. He's not as passive. He's making good contact. I went back through the game logs and he's hit a couple balls, 100 miles an hour. He's walked a lot. Everything just looks better. And it's what I expected drafting him in the middle rounds in a keeper league. I can't change my spring outlook on a rookie after 18 games. And I'm not going to change them after these 3 either that he's played since coming back up. I'll just say that these 3 games have helped sort of be the confirmation bias to my preseason outlook on Matt Shaw. Now, that preseason outlook has changed a little bit because we see he's got that funky batting stance. He doesn't hit the ball extremely hard, but I think he's got good contact skills and that will play. And, maybe he's a 15 to 20 homer guy at his peak with 30 to 40 stolen base upside. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I could see that. I'm not sure that that's going to play in a shallow 10 team league though as a third baseman.
That's fair. Yeah, I guess long term he'll only have third base eligibility, right? Even though this year he's got second, third, and short. I guess long term because he's only appeared at
Yeah,
third base.
I think those others will be gone. But hey, I guess that'd be great. Second baseman, but
That would be second base has been awful. I
horrible.
I heard the other day like the 6 second basemen in the top 100 are like not who you would think.
Oh yeah, not at all.
It's like Bryce Terang is the best second
Yeah.
baseman so far, and it's like there's
And
just
Brendan Donovan, I believe.
Brendan
It's
Donovan, and it's like there's just that position. Everyone coming into the season, I remember, was like, second base is deep. Second base is deep. No, it's not. Nothing
no,
changed.
it's awful.
It's so bad. It is so bad. Anyway, back to Matt Shaw. I think he can be a useful bench bat in a way,
Sure.
especially this season because of the triple eligibility. But if he's just going to have third base, I would rather have somebody like Noelvi Marte. How about you?
Really?
Yeah. Just purely third base eligibility.
I don't know. I mean, we have no idea who Marte is, you know?
Yeah, I guess
Like,
we got no idea who either one of these guys really
yeah.
are. The mystery box.
Yeah, actually, you're right. I don't know who I would choose, but I just, Marte obviously is he's disgraced with his his PED suspension, and then he was terrible coming back, and then he was kind of a hot flash, and now he's injured. So
But I think that hot flash only ended because he got hurt. I really like these young players, and I know you love these young players. Looking at them, analyzing them, finding them. I like that they're a complete unknown. That's also the maddening part about it.
yeah.
But I like that the possibilities are endless.
Right.
The next player I wanted to talk about is the severely under-rostered Yuri Perez of the Miami Marlins. Now, we talked a bit about Sandy Alcantara earlier in the pod.
Yeah.
We talked
I'm not
about
sure I
him.
agree with you there.
Okay. Well, Yuri is I think he's severely under-rostered, and I'll tell you why. And then we can get into analysis. Yuri, granted, he's coming back from Tommy John.
Yep.
Okay. But he's looked pretty good in his rehab outing so far. The velocity is there. Now, command hasn't been his strong suit, so I
Uh-oh.
realize that is, yep, I know. Okay.
Yikes.
But he's 20.
Alcantara is throwing hard too. He's throwing harder than ever.
Perez is 22 years old. It's not like he was ever bad when he was in the majors at any point. 2023, 19 appearances, 91 and a third innings, 108 strikeouts, 3.15 ERA, 1.13 whip. I don't think he'll have an innings issue coming back at this point either. I'm in. The price that you can get him for is like zero. He's available in 70% of leagues.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you take a chance?
I mean, sure, if he's just, languishing on your wire, I guess you could pick him up. I would just have, just not. It's to be seen if he's actually usable in the majors. Against, major league hitting, I'm not sure. I have low expectations. I'd be more excited to see what he's like next season, to be honest. I've just been burned too many times by pitchers coming back from TJ and other major injuries.
Fair. That is a fair point. And I do think risk aversion does play into this. Now, I'm talking about Yuri Perez not in he's going to come back and be the ace. No, I'm talking about him as my 6th or 7th pitcher and stabilize the back end of the rotation. I'm going to give you some names. You tell me if these are players that you would drop to pick up Yuri Perez. And I'm
All
going to
right.
start with one guy I am out on. Clay Holmes.
I'm not a big Holmes guy, but I think I would stick with him for right now. I don't know that I would just drop him for before seeing Perez actually pitch.
Brandon Pfaadt.
Yeah, I think I would stick with Fott.
AJ Smith-Shawver.
He had a bad start last night. I think when is Perez coming back? When is he projected to be activated?
My guess is 2 to 3 weeks because he's got 3 starts left in his rehab, according to the amount of starts that the Marlins wanted him to make.
I think I'd give Smith-Shawver maybe one more start, see what he does. I could see swapping since he probably didn't invest in him at all. I imagine Smith-Shawver in shallow leagues was probably just recently picked up for this hot stretch, but I don't really have a whole lot of confidence in him.
I'll give you 2 names because I think they're kind of similar. Both lefties. JP Sears and Tyler Anderson. Would you drop either one of those?
Yeah, right now. Yeah, absolutely.
Here's another lefty. Yusei Kikuchi.
Yep, do not trust him.
Zebby Matthews. Would you drop Zebby for Yuri?
Ooh,
Pair of young pitchers there. I would, and let me.
I think I probably would.
Yeah, because I don't
just
know how
based
long
on-
Zebby's going to have the job.
Yeah, based on also just pedigree, I think I'd probably go with Perez, but at the same time, it's like Matthews might end up being more useful, but we don't know.
How about 2 young pitchers I'll pair together, 2 righties. Shane Baz, Jackson Jobe.
Oof. I think if I was completely frustrated with Baz, I could see doing that. I don't think I would do that with Job.
Fair enough. I think those are a good smattering of pitchers to consider. Drop Tyler Anderson, drop JP Sears, drop Yusei Kikuchi for Yuri Perez. Oh, here's one more. Tylor Miguel.
I would do that.
All right, there you have it. That wraps it up for this week's episode. We'll be back next week with 2 new episodes, a midweek minutes to get you all caught up on the most important news and notes from around the league. You would have heard about Matt Shaw, Ronald Acuna, and Yuri Perez on the midweek minutes had you listened earlier this week. So to make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. That's Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, the Odyssey app, all major podcast platforms. You can find the Talking Fantasy Baseball podcast on them. So, for Josh, I'm Eric saying, see you next time.
So long.
Man, PCA just baffles me.